Okay, hello to all of you, whether it's morning or evening to you, or late evening. Welcome, and um, I believe you will enjoy this lecture tonight. We will start with a bow and the four great vows. Please bow. The four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Okay, we're going to start, and the topic today is actually taken from a compilation I was going to do myself prior to the Washington retreat. And I wanted to put together articles on one month, and lo and behold, I was Googling through, and I ran across somebody had put all of this together, and so I'm deeply indebted. It was compiled by Kokyo Henkel, and he really compiled a very great um, group of sutras and treatises to go over, and it was just really what I had in mind to talk from, and so it um, I wanted to make sure that he gets credit for putting this together, and it's something where all of these have to do with mind. And it's interesting because these particular little compilations of excerpts from different sutras and treatises really reflect the commonality of Ekayana, just one mind, from all the way through from Theravadan to Mahayana, from the Prajnaparamitas Mahayana to the Tathagata Garbha Mahayanas. And it comes from all sorts of angles, whether it's from the Abhidharma, the Maka school, and the Yogacara school. They're all coming in and flowing in a wonderful way into what I would call Chan, because that's what Chan is the utilization of all of these, where they're discrete schools, but Chan says, come on in. There's room for you. We can fit this in, and we can make it work, and we can use it as a practice vehicle. So it's the wonder of Chan in terms of its uniqueness, that it isn't necessarily a school. It's a compilation of all of the wisdom coming through Buddhism from various channels and coming in. And so this is what makes Chan so special, because it doesn't say this is apart from us. It says if it's useful, we'll use it. And it started with a quote from sometimes it's called the Luminous Sutra, or the Agutara Nikaya Sutra. Um, and the only thing is, I was looking for a better translation of this, but this one goes luminous, and the word Pabaswara, and Santa, you can pronunciate it for me if you, the word luminous.
Pavasara.
Pavasara. I was kind of close. Pavasara. Okay, thank you. And so it says luminous is the mind. It's very interesting when we think about this. Now remember, this is very early stuff, very early um, um, uh, material from Buddhism, and it's saying luminous is the mind. It's very interesting because in the Theravadan Nikayas, luminous is rarely referred to. It is quite often referred to in Mahayana, but not in Theravadan. But they nevertheless did have it in their doctrine, and it says and it is defiled by incoming defilements. The uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person doesn't discern that as it is actually present. So the person who is not a practitioner, they don't even know that the mind that they're using is the Buddha mind. They think that they have this separate consciousness, and that this separate consciousness has an identity, which is the name that they were given or decide to use. But it isn't really in this way, but that's what most people who come into this samsara believe. And say, and which is why I tell you, for the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person, there is no development of the mind. Remember, our whole practice that I provide is called mind work, because this is our emphasis is investigating and cultivating mind. But there are very few people, even Buddhists, that truly cultivate mind or investigate it. They investigate the Buddha, they investigate bodhisattvas and being good, but they never go to the root, the mula, which is the root of everything, that it is there, and it's this mind. And when we reduce it down to the lowest common denominator, it is luminous. Everything returns to it, even the one returns to this luminosity. We should not think that this is just simply a metaphor for mind. Mind is luminous. We cannot understand that. We cannot understand that it holds all light. It holds all darkness, holds everything. In this luminosity, darkness exists, but only conceptually. This luminosity is not the brightness of the sun. It's beyond the sun. Not something that we can know. It's something that we need to investigate. So he says, continues, luminous, and this is Shakyamuni speaking, luminous monks is the mind. It is free from incoming defilements. The well-instructed disciple of the noble ones discerns that it is actually present, which is why I tell you that for a well-instructed disciple of the noble ones, there is development of the mind. This is the door to Chan, is to recognize what we need to practice. Most of the time, what is presented and what we need to practice, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, the 6 paramitas, 37 factors of enlightenment, they're all there to build up to. But when we investigate mind, they're all reflected there. And when we understand, when we're sitting in meditation, precisely we're using mind. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but we're using the mind to see the method. We're using the mind to rest in that moment. We do not confuse mind with consciousness, specifically a consciousness that has an identity to it. It's very interesting that the Theravadins referred to what is called a bhavanga consciousness. And the bhavanga consciousness, I often use that term too, because it's helpful in some ways. You could equate it to an amplifier that is on but no music or nothing is connected to it to either amplify a voice or amplify a recording of whatever it is, but it is there and represents the potentiality of whatever's there. It doesn't add any color, any flavor. It doesn't interfere with the signal. It is just simply there. This is our true, you could say, sorry, it is like pratika samapada, the causes and conditions that enable whatever is there and coming through mind to be amplified. And it doesn't interfere with it, but it it reproduces it as it is in accordance to what's coming in. And as it's doing that, then what's happening is that one sees a projection, the projection of something, including the one that is presumably observing the projection is also a projection. It's very interesting. The Theravadins, they were equating this Bhavanga consciousness to the alaya from the Yogacara school, this storehouse consciousness. But you have to take a step back from Bhavanga to reach the alaya, the simple capacity to be able to perceive things is a process in which incorporated into that is the storehouse consciousness. It has to be that way. And the Theravadins recognized it has to be this way as well. Otherwise, it won't work. The only thing that they did was that they were looking at it and saying that all of this, because it's coming through this way, it's all real. The Mahayanas came and said, no, it's not real, because if it's real, it doesn't make sense, because if you're saying that something from the past predicates something that's happening in the present and can affect something in the future, it would never dissipate. It would never go away. But yet it disappears. So we cannot see things in this way. They're fundamentally empty. This emptiness is how mind works, and how, more importantly, how mind perceives, and how mind, pure mind, luminous mind, interacts with everything. It is not an automaton where it's just acting mindlessly. There is the mind, but the mind is the mind. It operates. It has the capability of acting spontaneously in any given moment. This very mind that you're using right now, never mistake it. It is the Buddha mind. And so what the ancients were saying, luminous, this mind is just this very mind that we use right now. And when we understand that, then we know where to explore. We don't have to look outside of ourselves for it. On the other hand, we do not call our consciousness the Buddha mind. The consciousness that appears is simply a projection, part of the function of mind that's happening. When we see things in this way, mind is clear, because we're seeing it from the viewpoint of mind itself, mind's own perception, which is different from the perception of the five skandha. That perception from the five skandhas is predicated on an idea of duality, of something that is apprehended and somebody that's apprehending it. But if we see that everything is fundamentally empty, the form, then the apprehender also disappears, because there's nothing to support that. What's left? Mind. So when we practice in this way of letting go, not only of what is apprehended, what is projected on the screen, but seeing through that very false impression of an ego, personality, or life and being that perceives that it is seeing that. And this is very, very important for us to when we practice sitting on a cushion or navigating through the deep prajna paramita, which is every single moment. We can convert it to mind. All we have to do is see it clearly. See it from the mind's own perception, not from this false perception or illusion. So we start in that way. Then we get to this sutra, Kevada Sutra, and it's also known as Kevada Diga Nikaya. And this is from the Pali Canon. And it says, where consciousness is signless, boundless, all luminous, that's where earth, water, fire, and air have no footing. So all of these elements that we perceive or the ancients perceive to make up everything else, they have no footing. Because when we see those, we see that those are not signless. They're constructed, they're conditioned, they're appearing in some way. A mountain appears for different reasons. It could be volcanic activity, or it could be a pushing up of one side to the other, and so lifting the mountain up. But nevertheless, there is a cause for all four. The waves in the ocean, the blowing of the air, all of these things that are there of the four elements are all conditional. So here they're saying it is where those elements can find no footing. You breathe, I'm alive. Are you really? Maybe this body's there, but after a while, this body will stop breathing. And is that where you're going to claim and say, where's Gilbert at? Oh, you see that, shriveled up mass right there. That's him. Is it really? And would I want to claim myself in another 50 years? If I'm here in another 50 years, please, like, chop my head off, okay? Because I'd be an abomination, a zombie or something, but I would not be a human. Let me see. Well, better make it 60, because Guanxin Master lived to 120. So I don't want you to be too premature with it. But in any case, the point is that you cannot find Gilbert in the body. You cannot find Gilbert anywhere, but mind is most assuredly present in this moment. And it's present in each and every one of you, but it's signless, formless. It's not made up of the elements. It makes up the elements. It creates everything that's around us. So when we begin to see things in this way, we're no longer this mechanical puppet trying to make it a better mechanical puppet. It's not going to work that way. We see that from the viewpoint and the wisdom of mind's own perception. And this is a major change. This is why they said in the Luminous Sutra, there's development of the mind for those who see it in this way. Okay. And when we see, and it says, there are both no footing. They're both long, short, great, small, fair, foul. There are name and form are wholly destroyed. So all of those things in mind, when we say they're destroyed, is we destroy the idea that these are real and concrete, because they're just the fabric of the mind. And they don't have an independent existence to them. There's no duality there. There is a quote from the Platform Sutra is very, very important. Let me see if I have that. And it was when Master Hongren had was talking to Hui Ning, and Hui Ning this was right after he wrote the words about the mirror stand bright and that doesn't exist, in opposition to Shen Shu's version that you always have to clean the mirror. And then he said originally there wasn't any mirror or mirror stand bright. Where is there any dust to a light? Then that evening, then Master Hongren went to where Hui Ning was there, and he was pounding the sand, pounding the rice, excuse me. And he looks down and says, is it done? And Hui Ning said, it was done a long time ago. And so then he hit his staff 3 times to signify for Hui Ning to come to his quarters on the 3rd watch. That would be very late at night. Rick, do you know what hour the 3rd watch is? Oh, you have to unmute him. Hang on, she's going to mute him. Because it's driving me crazy because I don't know the military 3rd watch. Can you unmute him? Or is he asked? There you go.
I believe it's 4 in the morning until 8.
There you go. It's pretty early in the morning. So by then everybody would be asleep. Thank you, Rick. Now I have my answer. So it was very, very early in the morning that he went to see him. And so Master Hongren, he took his sash and he covered both of them like they were like little kids, like in this little tent, so nobody could see them. And he began to discuss with him the Diamond Sutra. Hold on, let me see if I can find the quote. After all this, I better find it. And I'll read this. This is from Shenhua Master's Platform Sutra version. And he said, the patriarch, which was Master Hongren, covered them with his precept sash so they could not be seen, and explained the Diamond Sutra for him down to the line, one should produce a thought that is nowhere supported. One should produce a thought that is nowhere supported. Only mind work will be able to help you in unraveling what appears to be a mystery here. But I'll give you a hint, because where he says in the sutra that we were talking about, Kavada Sutra, it says that where consciousness is signless, boundless, all luminous, that's where earth, water, and fire and air have no footing. Their name and form are wholly destroyed. So that cannot support what Master Hongren's talking about when he's saying that when you have produce a thought that's nowhere supported, it's very powerful. It was so powerful that Master Huining, although he had realizations, he had an incredible realization in that moment, because he was speaking to him about using mind's own perception, that it does not rely on any conditioned existence, any element at all. It is just mind. It is what produces, but it does not need anything to produce a thought. It's very, very powerful for us. But when we sit to meditate, or we're doing something and the mind then becomes nowhere supported, one can obtain a realization, a deep realization from that, because we see that very, very clearly, that there is nothing there but mind. No matter where you see, it's just infinite light, infinite. There, it is dynamic. It is not dead. It's not like what happened to Gilbert. Oh, he saw the light and then he died. You know, how many times do we tell him not to go into the light, right? But he went into the light. It's not in that way. It has nothing to do with birth and death here. It is what we call the great death, which is simply the death of clinging to a life and being, a personality, or an ego. But this is how we practice. This is not something that's easy for people to understand. This lecture comes as the first lecture of the lectures I gave in Washington that I failed to record. It is kind of the same topic, but not quite, but nevertheless just as powerful. So if you're not getting this, it is okay. Don't worry about it. It is just something that little by little you'll be able to do. And I hope to reproduce the whole lecture, have it transcribed, perhaps into a book, but I need to record this part here. Okay, well, we continue on. And remember to change your watches. I panicked when I saw my watch was an hour ahead right now. Okay. The Nirvana Sutra, and it says, there is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated. If there were not that unborn, unbecome, unmade, and unfabricated, there would not be a case for emancipation from the born, become, made, or fabricated would be discerned. But precisely because there is an unborn, unbecome, unmade, and unfabricated, emancipation from born and become, made, fabricated is discerned. What this means is that there is something that we call unborn. This is mind itself. You could call it the primordial mind, the primordial Buddha. It is there. It's never been born. And because of that, and if one has faith in mind, then we have faith that we can go beyond what is born and fabricated. This is very powerful because this is very simple, but is very profound if one goes beyond the elementary understanding of it to the profound, or even more so to the esoteric, that one can instantly see through the fabricated and see that as mind itself. And later on, I'm going to show you some diagrams to try to explain this a little bit more. I just want to establish a foundation first. Now, from the Ashta Sutra, this is the Ashta Sharika Prajnaparamita Sutra, perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines. This is a very early Mahayana Sutra, very powerful. It was an incredible turning of the Dharma wheel to redirect the emphasis of the practice from one of individual salvation to the practice of great compassion and the delivering of all beings, while realizing that all beings are illusory. But as they're illusory, they nevertheless still suffer. Those illusory beings are products of the mind. Later in the Tathagata Garbha Sutra series, which is another turning of the Dharma wheel, it was established that this is Buddha nature and that all of us possess this Buddha nature. And this Buddha nature is something that, although it's not an individual self or a great self or a God or anything along those lines, it's not a greater being. It is just simply the Buddha mind that we all possess. And that was a significant elaboration or expansion of the understanding of the Mahayana Prajnaparamita practice where we're practicing this wisdom and cultivating mind via this wisdom. So I could go on for a long just to talk about the importance of this Ashta Sutra, but let's get to it. The mind of the Buddha is never stopped. It was never produced. It has no duration in between production and stopping. It gives no support. Interesting, right? It gives no support. So whatever support that's relied upon, now think about this, it gives no support. What does that mean? Anybody want to gather a guess here why it says it gives no support? This is going way deep. Mark? Go ahead.
There's nothing to attach to.
Nothing to attach to? Okay, anybody else? Tori? Yep, you have to unmute her. No? Or you just raise your hand or?
Okay, here we go. Anything that is supported, I think it's under causes and conditions, and it's still within duality. So that's why.
So what's unique about causes and conditions we could call pratika samapada? It gives them support.
Support, it's like if I'm meditating, right? And then I have some thoughts coming up. The thoughts, it's coming from something else, and that something else is coming from something else. And in Chinese, we call it panyuan. So it's supported by some kind of cause or some kind of condition. I don't know. That's my guess.
Okay, it's fine. You know, you're working on it. Senta, I know you know this.
It's non-stick.
Huh?
Mind is non-stick.
Non-stick. So we talk about the kusala mind, but here when we talk about support, although because of pratika samapada, cause and condition never fail, which is the Buddha mind, it nevertheless does not interfere with the production of illusions within it. It does not support, I support the good, I support the evil. It doesn't do that. Everything there is occurring naturally in accordance with causes and conditions. It is not the arbiter that says, you know, we need to put a fig leaf on that statue, you know, or whatever, or we need to take the fig leaf off the statue. It doesn't interfere with what's projected there. Everything is projected in mind, but it gives it no support. But on the other hand, none of those things support mind. Mind essentially allows those things to appear within it, but it doesn't say this cannot be seen. I'm sorry, this projector is only for a general audience. You can't put any R-rated or PG movies on it. It doesn't give support in that way. It's very interesting. So let's continue. It is infinite. And this is very important. And kind of I was talking to the people in the Washington retreat and saying, when you sit to meditate, you should have the feeling when you're sitting that as you're wall gazing, as you're looking at the method, just imagine it infinite, so that the mind is not static, but just simply infinite, just this kind of a sensation of expansion. It's kind of an interesting thing, but what it does is it creates a mind that is dynamic, but yet is still. And you say, how can it be still if it's you know, infinitely expanding? But it is in this way, we cannot conceptualize it from the samsara side. It cannot be measured. It is inexhaustible, like the realm of the Dharma. The realm of the Dharma here they're referring to is the Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya also could be equated to the Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha womb, where everything that arises comes from. And that which is arising then is seen by the non-arising mind. And that non-arising mind is not other than the Buddha mind, the mind's own perception, mind looking at mind. So it has the ability to do that via its omniscience, that it can observe everything simultaneously. Human beings cannot do that. We work on binary information, ones and zeros. It has to constantly be clicking, changing from this to that. But it happens so quickly, we observe it to be solid motion. But in fact, it isn't in this way. And it's just a fabrication. But the Buddha mind is infinite. It's still yet in constant motion and constant stillness. And that appears to be a contradiction unless one has a realization of that. But even listening to that, it gives you food for contemplation in terms of how this works. And it also creates a dissatisfaction in your understanding of this, that you want to try to say, what is he talking about? The Tathagata knows the polluted minds of beings for what they are. For he knows, and here I would use the word for he perceives, and forget about the feminine, masculine there. That's just old time words. There's not a masculine and feminine there. I don't know whether in the original Sanskrit they were using masculine and feminine, but here I would say for the Tathagata knows that the minds of ordinary people are not actually polluted by the polluting forces of perverted views, which being nothing, these perverted views being nothing but wrong ideas, do not really find a place in them. So the Tathagatas find nothing there to support their perception. All of that is seen as just illusions. And the Tathagatas go beyond these illusions. We cling to it. We say, this is bad. I can't believe this particular politician. You can put whoever you want to put in there, or this person is so bad, or this singer is so bad, or whatever. You can put whatever you want in there. But the Buddhas rise above that and say, all of this stuff is pratika samappada. It's causes, conditions of this illusion, of this dream. And it knows that. And through its own mind, sets about to remove this illusory suffering, knowing that it is not real. Because the mind itself is fundamentally pure. It's just having a bad dream, and collectively a bad dream. But it knows that even though we knock ourselves on the head and say, but this sounds like wood, it's got to be wood. And so you self-prove yourself, but it isn't in this way. If we let go of that and say, just imagine that you were in a dream, what would then you start looking around and going, all of this is a dream. This is coming up from whatever. You're able to look at it differently. You go, I can wake up from this dream because this is just a dream, even though it looks like it. And all the people that are the inhabitants of this dream are dreaming, but they don't know that. But you look at it and go, I would really like to wake these people up. They don't have to have a dream where they're killing each other. That doesn't make sense. Or people are starving when right next to them there's a rich person gorging himself with fine food. So we see that and we say this is not right. Is because everything is the Dharmakaya, this Buddha womb. We don't understand that, and as a result of it, within this Buddha womb, via the mind's own creation, there is this dream world. We don't understand that. We cannot understand it because we look around and we say, well, we can go out in the solar system and go out farther. We haven't been able to go out past whatever we see in stars. What's beyond that? We don't know. And we don't know anything about that. So we just presume that everything is real. And that's what our problem is. Okay. And then it goes, nothing but wrong ideas do not really find a place in them. The Tathagata knows unpolluted thoughts for what they are, for he knows those minds are transparently luminous. So these unpolluted thoughts are kusala thoughts, the not sticky thoughts, and is our essential original nature. So this is going right to this luminous that was started out there and talking about this luminosity of the original nature. So what I wanted to do, and hopefully after so many tries, talk to you about how you apply this in meditation. I really wish I had like maybe 40 hours to talk to you about this, because I've got about 40 hours worth of lecture backed up. And unfortunately, I don't have that luxury of time. So I have to kind of move on. And there's so much more I'd like to say, even before we move to the next one. But I wanted to talk to you about how we meditate and how we use this in our practice. So whoever is the graphics maestro, please put up number 1. Okay, what we have here, and some of you have seen this before, is on one side, the left side, this is the knowing mind, which is referred to as the root zi, and that's the knowing mind. And on the right side is the root Sheng, which is the mind ground, or you could refer to it as the Dharmakaya, but it is that aspect of mind in which projections are projected upon. And if you see this, you'll see that there's an M there in green, and that M in green indicates the method. And then you'll see somebody who's sitting there meditating on that side. And then the mind is looking at those projections there. And as it's looking at those projections, we say, well, what is it seeing? How does it see this? How does it look at that? And if we were to look at things from the person that's sitting there, he would be looking at the method and believing that he is meditating. But in fact, he is only an obstruction. This is what is called a double obscuration of the mind. One is the method which we bring forth, but obscures the luminosity of the mind. And then there is a person sitting there that also obscures the luminosity of the mind. When you practice simply from the right side of this picture, that's why you can't get anywhere. You can't make progress because you don't know how mind works. You don't understand that. So if we go to the second picture, mind would look at this. This is a cross section from what we were seeing before. So if we were going to turn that half a spear towards the viewer here is mind itself. And mind is seeing that the mind ground is obscured. Why? Because of the double obscuration of the person that's sitting there appearing to be someone meditating and the method itself. But you see just a little bit of luminosity, not too much luminosity there, because it's practicing, but it's practicing from the viewpoint of a self or an ego. And that's how most of you meditate. You never move back from there to go back to number one again, please. Thank you. You never go back to this eye that's looking there. So this is the double obscuration, the M, oh, thank you, and the little silhouette there. They're the double obscuration. So when we're doing this and we turn that picture, go back to 2, please. Then what we have there is we can't see anything in the mind ground. We can't see because it's obscured and the luminosity is obscured. We cannot see that. The Tibetans used to call it clear light. No, to me, I refer to it as infinite light because that's, to me, it's infinite light. And so we go to the next, number 3, please. Now in number 3, we begin to practice better, and you highlight that little silhouette person. That silhouette person right there is a lot smaller. Their practice is better. And so they are beginning to use a bit of mind's own perception as well as their own. But there's still an obstruction, but it's not as great. The method becomes much clearer. It's seen much clearer, and it becomes more stable as it is. And so that little obstruction is beginning to change. At this point in time, there is an idea that, hey, this is working. This is working. And so they will see, and go to 4. They'll begin to see like this. There's the method right there. They're holding on to the method, and lo and behold, the mind becomes more luminous. This luminosity can be considered to be wisdom itself. So it penetrates through the obstructions and the illusions and begins to see them as illusions. And at this point, because it's beginning to use this wisdom, then it realizes this silhouette that's there is also an illusion. It is also a projection. This is a major move, because at this point, then it's kind of vacillating between mind's own perception and this perception from the 5 skandha that's trying to hold this method there. But it doesn't need as much mind power to hold it. So this idea of a personality or an ego is beginning to wane. And so more of the mind is seen, more one comports to wisdom in their everyday life. They see things via the wisdom of pratika samappada. Through body, speech, and mind, the mind is becoming more stable, and things around it are clarified. It is seen through things now, and seeing their cause. It doesn't see them as a static defilement anymore. It's breaking down that idea that this world is in this way and this silhouette is real. That static defilement of a life and being or an ego, this nescient entrenchment that the Quinchramala Sutra refers to, is now weakening. Okay, so we go to the next one, please. So now the mind begins to see the method from its own nature, its true nature. And there is not, you see, the obstruction of the idea of a silhouette of a person that's looking at it. This is how you should meditate. From the very moment that you sit and you cross your legs, you should meditate in this way. Do not think, I am meditating. Do not have the thought that I have to hold the method. You simply meditate in this way. And you see things very, very clearly. Okay. And then hold on for a second. What do you think that would look like then? So we go to the next one. And you begin to see that the method begins to, you penetrate through it. Sometimes I refer to it as like transparent fish, late in coming, because you're barely seeing the method anymore. And the method could be anything, but when you see the masters and they have these piercing eyes, they can see through all obstructions. They can see through the illusion. This is what is happening here. The method is barely holding on because it doesn't have any value anymore. So we get to the next one. And then you see things in this way because you're using your method. It's there, it's serving a function, but the mind is fully luminous. And is that the last one? Okay. Probably would have put one without the M at all and just have this total luminosity that you see through, but the M is only there because you're meditating. But even that will drop off. Shifu used to say that never abandon the method, let the method abandon you. So then the next step would be that it's just totally this luminous or infinite light or clear light. And it doesn't mean that the world disappears. It may disappear for a moment or for longer, but then when it comes back, but the world is seen precisely as it is, as an illusion. And using the wisdom penetrates through the idea of time. So past, present, and future are all fused together. When they say that the Buddha is in the present moment, the Buddha time is all time and no time at all, because it's just the Buddha mind. And it penetrates through the illusion of the sequential moments of time, because it's just that way. A Buddha functions in this world via an appearance body, but knowing that appearance body, the Nirmanakaya, is just an illusion. It's just there. It's not really real, but it's useful to say, if there are a lot of people that are dreaming and they're having this bad dream, I can go into their dream and begin to awaken them. That is the function of the mind. That is the function of compassion. So this is how we use things and how we work things is in this way. If you can meditate with this kind of an idea that you're using the perception of mind to meditate rather than using your own mind, it will change things dramatically. You will then have, and a lot of you have been able to do that. And at the retreat, a lot of people had that kind of an experience where it all kind of went away, and which was good. It was legitimate experiences of timelessness and clarity of the mind. No, this is only valuable if one uses that wisdom to awaken the purpose of this bodhicitta that we have, to come back into the world and to awaken others and say, there is a way to do this, so you have to be able to practice in this way, and it works. If you follow this, I guarantee you it will work. Okay. And so don't be afraid to to use this, and don't be afraid if everything falls off. A lot of people say, and I've heard from so many people, some people even in this group, that when they were young, they'd meditate and then everything fell off and they got scared. And so they didn't want to meditate for a long time. Is natural because they had no idea what was happening, but essentially the true nature of the mind was arising. I shouldn't say arising, was realized on its own. It wasn't something that arose, but it was just the fundamental nature, the self nature of mind. And so it's interesting when we look at it, and so people go, well, what do we call mind? And there's things where they say, it's the self nature of mind, true nature of mind, pratika samapada, original mind. It goes by so many names, but yet no names at all. And the best one that has come up is thus, because it really doesn't have a name. It is just in that way. If you want to name a kid, name him thus. If you don't like that one, such. All right, I know you're not going to do that, but he could imagine if you named the kid thus, and they go, "Why is your name thus?" He could always be presenting the Dharma to people, because he'd have to explain all of that. He probably hates you, but it's all right. I'm just finishing up now. Okay, I think that's about it for today's lecture. Thank you for processing those diagrams. It worked very well and better than I expected. So for a lot of you that went to the retreat, this is a good refresher for you. For some of you, this was the level that we were presenting the Dharma and practicing, and it just got deeper from there. This was like the introduction. But in any case, I'll see if I'll revisit some of that. I don't know whether it's too deep for everyone, that it might be too much, but we'll see. If you guys feel comfortable with it, I might go through it and revisit it, just simply because it's really incredible if we can kind of do that. So thank you for listening, and I'll open it up for questions. Not everybody jump at once. Harry, I knew you'd be the first one. Go ahead.
I have to mute. Oh, hi. How are you, Gilbert?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would have loved to go on the retreat. Just couldn't make it. I hear it was really good. Anyway, I just wanted to read a passage to you. I gave a talk on the 24th chapter on the Lotus Sutra, and there's this is a quote from Sheng, who's the first Chinese to give a real commentary on the sutra. So in this quote, causes and conditions, I take to mean praticca samappada, true mind, and he uses this word calendrical numbers, and I'm taking that to mean the way that we perceive the world, the ordinary sentient beings. So the quote is, the causes and conditions and calendrical numbers match with each other in the way a shadow matches a real object, an echo matches a real voice. This being the case, how can one escape luck or misfortune and calamities or happiness? That's the first part. And then it goes on to say, yet profound speeches and preaching on Li, right? Li is that principle, which is, as far as I can see, is actually being in sync with true mind. So profound speeches and preaching on Li are cut off from the general mass by the dimension that can only be expressed as wondrous or mysterious, with the result that those with shallow knowledge become too weak-willed to receive and keep the sutra. So it's coming at it from a different angle, but I thought of you when I read this. I thought it was sort of in the ballpark.
Yeah, I when I heard you were teaching that chapter, I was going, wow, blessings to you. I hope you
That
hold
was-
it again.
That was tough, let me tell you.
But it's good though. It's good for you to go forward with it and present it to others, because then that way they won't think there's just one kook out there. There's two kooks, but I mean that I was really happy to hear that you were doing that and going, all right, because it really stretches you in terms of demanding from you excellence to be able to discuss it and looking at it. And when we say an echo, and a sound or a shadow in a person, and we still have to penetrate through to see these things, they're all illusions, and they're illusions in the mind, but they fit together simply because of causes and conditions of the very action of the mind of pratika samappada. And so it's kind of an interesting thing in terms of that, where we see, and that essentially is pointing to and utilizing this profound wisdom to see things and say that, but for but for the sun coming out and this person walking there is a shadow. And we see things exactly as they are and understanding how these things all fit together. And so it's important. And when you present it one on, like I mentioned, basic cable, but that chapter isn't conducive to basic cable. It requires you to go to profound. And so you have to start from there, and try to see if some of the people can hear this stringless lute playing, which is the esoteric. And but yeah, that I understand that. I feel, kind of, let's say, the mind wisdom in that. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's great. Are you still doing lectures on the sutra?
Yeah, I've got two more. I'm finishing the whole sutra. I've got chapter 27 and chapter 28 to do.
Wow. Again, that's quite a bit there for you to handle, because it's kind of like this big crescendo as it gets towards the end. So good. Okay, any other questions or comments? Nobody? This was beyond you guys? Is that why? Maybe I have to go back to D, E, F, and G.
Gilbert, as you were speaking, I could feel the luminosity, the brightness, the light, and infinite light means Amitabha.
Yes, quite so. It can be explained in that way. So as I was speaking, I could feel you feeling that. How is that, right? But just simply because you let your literally you let yourself go, and just simply were what you've done, which is very important, is that Senta is able to take the lecture, what I'm saying, and convert it into the esoteric, and she knows how to suspend the self and the doubts of the self, because she has such great faith in the mind that she just sinks into it easily, and all of you are capable of that, all of you. And when you get a whole group together like we did in Washington and just keep hitting it every single day, it was really amazing. I thought I saw Sue here. Oh, there she is. She's not lit up, but we have to thank Sue for creating this wonderful environment that we able to practice like that. But I want to kind of recreate some of that here, and just so you can feel, imagine listening to this all day and practicing it. And truly, some people practice very sincerely with it. No, it's very good. Yes, David.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Gilbert. I'd be one of those that would listen to all 40 hours if you prepare it. The question I wanted to ask in the diagrams about the method, if the method is silent illumination, which is the method and no method, would that be like just mind observing all this without David being there? Or is it like nothing to observe? Or I
There
don't
would
know
only
exactly what
be-
the question is.
Yeah, there would only be one obscuration, and that would be you. And it's kind of like somebody at a play sitting behind somebody that's 6'5" and wearing a cowboy hat, and you'd go like, get out of the way, right? You can't see anything. So that's a good analogy. You can't see anything, but there's still the obscuration there that obscures the natural essence of the mind ground. And so whatever is seen, irregardless of whether it arises and appears to be a dream, it's penetrated. It is something that is then interpreted as be arising due to a previous cause. So it is perfectly in its place. We don't have to make the mind blank. It doesn't do that. We don't have to make all the stars in the sky disappear. We just simply have to see through them to see these two are an illusion, no matter if they're how many parsecs away from us, trillions and trillions of miles times trillions times infinity, and it blows your mind, but it doesn't matter up to something that's a grain of sand. All of those things, they all are connected, and there's no distance or space between them. All of this, as one is using the mind is very intimate with it, very intimate. It knows. We talk about intimacy like saying, oh, well, this person is intimate with that one. They know that person's thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can wax poetic about falling in love and being intimate with somebody, to know them more than anybody else. But imagine if you have a mind that's that way with everything around you, all appearances, all possibilities. That is mind. The potentiality is infinite, but mind is intimate with all of you. Sometimes, I was like, when I was with Shifu, I felt like especially when I first was having interviews with him, I felt like I was naked. No, I'm not saying that in a profane way, but I felt it in a way that I felt that he was so intimate with me, that he knew my most secret, my most inner thoughts, my cravings, my desires, my obstructions, vexations, that he could see through me. Chang Shen, did you ever have that feeling with Shifu? See if you can unmute her. There you go.
Sometimes I feel, maybe a couple of times I feel Shifu's eye just like a cosmos, and the first time I feel very scared. I feel like
Wow.
feel that it had power. Yeah.
It's very interesting, because you get this feeling from somebody that has this deep wisdom like that they see right through you. They see you so transparent in their way. It's something very amazing. Anybody else have an experience like that with Shifu? Harry, go ahead, because this is kind of important. Go ahead and unmute him. Thank you, Shanshan.
There we go. Yeah, I felt like I couldn't hide anything from him, and he saw right through me. And and I could never seem to fool him. You know, he would, all the kind of artifice that I brought to him. I remember once where I would take things that he said out of context. So once he talked about some disciples of Master Xuanhua who, you know, would stay outside in the cold, not come in, they wouldn't eat, and about a young monk who was advised, you know, practice now and practice really hard. And I thought, well, it's really all over for me, right? I can't do any of those things. And Shifu looked at me and said, I never said that. You know, I had made up this story for myself, and it's just, you just couldn't put anything over on him. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah. The reason I bring up this idea of this intimate is because this is the perceiving mind of a Buddha. When we use a perceiving mind of the Buddha, irregardless of whatever arises in mind, let's say if you're meditating, you're intimate with what's arising. It could be a vexation, you know, I want a new car, or, you know, I want a new partner. I want, you know, whatever I wanna, or it could be anything that's arising, even the smallest thing. What's for lunch, and or whatever it is. One is intimate with that without looking at it. We just simply know that it's present in mind. We know in that moment precisely why it's present in mind. We know precisely that it is appearing precisely because of some cause or condition. And there is this intimacy with all appearances in mind because they belong to mind. They don't belong to anything else. Even though we think they're illusion, they're illusions of the mind. And seeing through to one's nature, there is this direct communication via this esoteric channel. And so it's very amazing. And little by little, the more you practice, the more you're here. You know, if I'm still presenting in 10 years from now, you're going to be more and more intimate with this. You're going to be teaching people this. No, but it's a big key. You know, I started talking about that, and then I'm kind of fleshing it out as I'm talking to you now of what that feels like. This kind of a direct connection, really literally direct contemplation of whatever is appearing in mind. And this direct contemplation is of everything simultaneously. Mind is capable of that. We are not capable of that. So when we run across somebody that has this kind of ability, we're overwhelmed in front of them. You know, it's like, I'm not worthy, you know, because it's so powerful. It literally is. When you're running into somebody with that kind of experience, they see through you. No, that's why I said I felt like I was naked there, naked, not just clothes, naked of all emotions and affections and vexations and whatever. But you know, after a while, this is the way that you see things. You see people in this way, the samsara as an illusion, but it's all connected. And it brings an incredible amount of interpretation and meaning to this dream that we are not capable, as somebody simply walking around in the dream asleep. We are not capable of this kind of a perception. But mind can, because mind is a creator of the dream. So it's very important. So when you sit to meditate, become intimate with your method, intimate with whatever's arising there. You don't have to push it out. It belongs to you. You know exactly why it's arising. So you're just at peace. Not bad, right? Pretty good. Any other comments, questions?
A comment from Julia at Taiwan. I thought our own imagination is also illusion, but why we use imagination during meditation, as you mentioned early in the lecture? Thank you.
The imagination, sometimes it's referred to as poison fighting poison, which is that we create a method. Now, the method of no method does not use imagination, but using the Huatou, counting the breath, observing the breath, reciting the Buddha's name, all of these are imagination. And we use them simply as a placekeeper or a bookmark. So if we have a bookmark, then we go, okay, this is where I left off, or this is where I should be at. And so you keep that there so that you compare it. That's why I used in the example meditation and showing there's this method in green that's there, and then eventually seeing through the method itself. That's the intimacy of the mind, being able to see through that method. But we use it for the sake of being able to stabilize the mind. Our practice of Chan does not have the concentration methods of the Theravadins, who have extensive concentration methods to lift them from one jhana to another jhana, a consciousness to another consciousness, and we don't use that. And they can become a crutch as well in terms of doing that. And it's kind of like the Japanese use of a goan and passing the goans, and thinking if they pass a goan and there's somebody that says you passed a goan, you have this feeling of self-accomplishment there. But that too is an illusion. But we use this illusion just simply to keep mark of a particular point. Shifu, he used to say that the use of a method and staying on the method is just like a big bullfrog sitting on a lily pad, and the bullfrog is so big that you can't even see the lily pad because he covers it completely with his body. He's referring to the bullfrog as mind and the lily pad as the method. And so when the method completely the bullfrog completely covers the method, it cannot be seen. It doesn't reproduce another lily pad or another one for the bullfrog to jump. The bullfrog is just simply content to sit on this one pad. In that way, then, whatever imagination that we use is not really sequential. It's not leading to another thought that goes to another one and have this akusala, sticky mind. It's just simply sitting on this one method where it becomes irrelevant because it's just repetitious in mind. If you're counting the breath, what can you glean out of counting the breath or observing the breath? There's nothing to say, oh, that was a good breath or that was a bad breath. You don't do that. You just simply are watching. After a while, it becomes meaningless, just like the Huatou does in terms of doing that. So we use it in this way, essentially, to stabilize the mind. Once we don't need it, it will abandon you because there's no relevancy to it anymore, and the mind will be stabilized. Okay, good question. And yes, Harry.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention in the Sutra of Complete Enlightenment, when Shifu, or the sutra gives 3 methods of Samantha, Samutpada, and Dhyana. That second one is the method of fighting illusion with illusions, and that links up to like tantric practice, where you're visualizing a deity, which is all imagination.
Yeah, they I don't think they tell you that right away in the Tibetan, do they? Santa, you've studied that. Did they tell you right away that that's really an illusion?
I'm sorry, I was responding to a message. Could you repeat that?
Oh, because he was saying that in the tantric practice, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Harry, if you could.
Yeah, where you visualize a deity with
Mhm.
the ultimate goal of becoming the deity yourself, right?
Yes.
That's the practice. That's an imaginative practice. That's using the imagination of the mind, but using it in a way, to come to mind itself.
Mhm.
And my question was that ultimately it comes to the idea that that too is an illusion.
Yes.
But
Right.
since you practice, I believe you practice it, do they tell you from the beginning it's an illusion?
Yes, from the beginning. So it's the practice is typically, the visualization of the deity, the visualization of the self as a deity, and then both dissolving into emptiness.
Okay, so it's a 3-step process then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
All right. Yeah, and that's kind of what we do, in ours. But the thing is that especially in the sun illumination, we're kind of acting without a net, which is it's hard because we have to develop that level of concentration, that samatha, to be able to have the samadhi come in, the right samadhi. Hey, I think my son's home. So anyway, okay. Any other questions? No questions? My dog had a question, but I'll take it up with him later. Nothing? Oh, I think we had a very good discussion today. The questions always are very good. And they're things, never ever think you're going to ask a low-level question or a stupid question. There's no such thing. Okay. You ask your questions, ask them, and at some point then you stop asking questions because you think that you might reveal, that you're not as high a level as Gilbert thinks you are. I know what your level is. Okay. So you shouldn't worry about that. All right. And ask your questions, and because it's important. That's why I have the mind work forum, because anybody can come in there and ask a question. It doesn't have to be this profound question that you saw when you were floating through the cosmos or whatever. Okay. It can be very, very simple, very practice oriented. Okay. This isn't just simply for that. Yes, Changshen. She'll unmute you. There you go.
Yeah, recently I'm reading again the Awakening Faith in Mahayana Sutra, Awakening Faith in Mahayana Sastra, and then I'm very curious about the 52nd, stage of from ordinary people to Buddhahood. So it divides like the 10 stage of faith, and then 10 this, and then yeah. But for me, I feel I really interesting in when practicing certain stage, what it look like, what this person look like, or how might function in certain stage. It's one thing, but I feel on one hand it's Chan practice, but on the other hand is the sutra says the 52 stage, and I don't know how to connect the two. It's my first question. And then the second question is that, what do you think about this 52 stage? Because sometimes it take like, it say like 3 Sangha years or something. It's very long time, and this stage take like 10,000 years, and this stage I feel like it's a lot of time, and I know time itself is timeless theoretically. Yeah, it's no time to see, but I still feel like the time things, and how do you think about that? I want to, because the way you explain sutra is more more like more daily life to me. It's not something too like Buddhist terminology. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like I was at the 38th stage and then I had a beer and I went down to the 25th stage. So I have to work my way back up. I'm not a big level person, you know, whether it's from the Theravadan or from Mahayana and stuff, you know, or passing goans, as I mentioned, you know, big deal. You passed a goan. What the heck does that mean? You know, and if you're going, I passed a goan, you know, I'm that much closer to enlightenment. Really? You know, what are you feeling right now? So I understand that they describe these, but I also understand that in the sutras, they also say in a snap of the fingers, or like Hui Ning with Subhatism in the Platform Sutra, one can instantly become enlightened. And I don't see things in these kind of a stage, you know, to me, that's, again, what I mentioned, I'm probably beating it to death, like a stairway to heaven that we're building. And I'm going like, really? Like, you would seem like after you got to the 35th stage or whatever, you could care less what stage you're on. And so to me, if it's held on to, it could be an obstruction. I like the way in which the Shurangama Sutra in its 50 demonic states describes, you may experience this along the way, and they're talking about super mundane abilities, and say that if you just see this as a progression of the practice and let it go, then you can continue on. And I'd rather see things in that way, where if something comes up and all of a sudden you can, you know, you've developed some super mundane ability, you just let it go. You know, you just see it for what it is. And otherwise you'll fall into a demonic state, meaning that you're going down. That's why I was joking about having a beer and going down the ladder again, you know. And so I understand that's there. It's for practice and for us, like, to encourage us to go and say, well, if you go this way, but in fact, we know that there's no path. There's no direct path. If we follow this, like follow the yellow brick road, you know, and we'll finally get to the Emerald City. You know, it isn't in this way. The path is just in the present moment, staying clear in the present moment. This present moment then transcends to the Buddha's present moment, which is infinite. And I rather present things in this way. I'm not saying that what you've read, and I think you feel the same way, what you read is there as a guidepost, just like the paramitas and whatever, but it isn't necessarily that one progresses at this steady state going up, like the bhumis, for instance, the 10 bhumis. A person could have be in the first bhumi and jump up right away because of their causes and conditions, past life practice, whatever, like Hui Ning, you know. He didn't go through all the bhumis, and nor did Hongreng say, well, let me show me proof that you went through all these bhumis. He knew right away that he jumped right from the first to the 10th in that, or first to the 9th, and then you know, he took him the rest of the way home. So we use those as inspiration, but not necessarily to cling to them as some kind of a way of determining our level. You know, we don't have, you know, white belts, yellow belts, green belts, blue belts, and black belts. You know, this is not a karate school. And so we shouldn't think in that way. But if we follow what's stated in there, that's not bad. It can't hurt. The only way it can hurt is if you think you're at the 37th level, right? And then you'll be so worried about falling off that level because you watched an R-rated movie or whatever, whatever that could take you off of your practice. So we see things in the middle way, and I love the incorporation in Chan of the Madhyamaka school, because in the Madhyamaka school, it puts everything in a perspective, which was there from the very beginning with Shakyamuni Buddha, saying we don't tighten the strings on the lute too tight or too loose. No, it's just the middle way. And when we see things this way, I think, to me, that has served me more importantly than trying to jump through this hoop or this hoop. So hopefully that explains how I feel.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chan Chen's a very, very great practitioner. She's going to be, all right, never mind. I'll be talking about Deepankara in a moment. And Shakyamuni. But she has let's put it this way, she has a great potential. And I sincerely support her, and her practice at Dharma Drum. So anyway, very good. Okay, anybody last? That's it? Okay. So I can take a rest and make some dinner for myself. But tune in, we'll stay at this. I kind of want to get a feel for if this is too deep for you and we need to dial it back or not, so please kind of make your comments known somewhere so I can get a feel for it. Okay. Because it's pretty deep, and so I don't want you to feel too intimidated or that you have to, if you don't understand this, you're a failure. No, quite the opposite. The very fact that you're listening to it is meritorious. Okay. So we will see you. Thank you very much for tuning in. Amitofo.